Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking Magazine's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host and Fine Woodworking editor, Tom McKenna, and with me today are regulars, Executive Art Director Mike Pekovich.
Hey, guys.
And Special Projects Editor, Matt Kenny.
What's up, fellas?
And today we'll also be introducing the newest member of our team later in the show. Of course, if you're watching, you might have a glimpse of him already. Before we get started, let me take care of some housekeeping. Don't forget to check our website to keep up with our exciting tool giveaway. For our 40th anniversary, we're giving away 40 great tools, but the prizes change regularly, and you have to enter for each one. The current prize is a New Concepts coping saw. To enter, go to finewoodworking.com/40sweeps. That's the number 40. For this prize, you have to enter by Monday, January 18th. Also, keep a close lookout for some of our big money prizes. This month, we've already given away a Grizzly 8-inch jointer, and soon we'll be offering a full spray kit from Apollo.
So if you miss out on the $1.4 billion Powerball, you can get a sprayer.
Sign up.
Yeah.
And this is free, actually. You don't have to wait in line or do anything like that. Also, I want to let folks know about another way to keep up with Fine Woodworking. We finally have an Instagram account. So look for us at Fine Woodworking Magazine on Instagram. And Matt, Mike, and I also have accounts there, so you can keep tabs on what we're doing in the shop. It's all good. And these guys have kind of a friendly rivalry going on between the two of them about who has the most followers.
I understand you had dinner with all of your Instagram followers the other night.
There were like 5, right?
It was me and my kids and my wife. Yeah, when I was in Salt Lake City, I mentioned that I was going to Salt Lake City on my Instagram feed, and so some very friendly individuals said, "Hey, you should meet us for dinner."
That's cool.
And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." And so actually, Chris Gochner and I went to dinner at a local restaurant, and we met with, there was a guy named Alan was there, and Blake, and TJ, and Preston's wife was there. And also, the last guy, I believe his name was John. I hope I'm remembering that correctly.
Well, thankfully you met in a public place, right?
Yeah. Well, it turned out that none of them were creepy or borderline murderous. So, and Chris Gochner actually knew 3 of the guys already. So, but it was nice. It was fun to. Usually, when I'm on the road, it's actually kind of lonely because you spend your whole day with the author, and then at the end of the day, you just go and you do your dinner or what have you. And
and you look across the table from each other. It's like we've just spent 12 hours together.
I don't take no. You don't take the author at the dinner every night.
No, I kind of like being alone when I'm on the road. To be honest with you, but it's all good.
So it was nice to have a dinner with people and to talk and talk about woodworking.
Cool.
It was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to question number 1. This one comes from Kevin, and he says, "Hey guys, I'm finally building my dream garage shop. I've got a SawStop PCS 175, an Incra router table system, a Festool track saw, and a Domino 500. I still need a bandsaw, jointer, and planer. I'll be ordering a 14-inch bandsaw soon, but the jointer and planer decision is killing me. The only things I'm settled on is that both will have segmented cutter heads, and the jointer will be a minimum of 8 inches wide. Do I get a separate machines or a combo?" That's a good question.
That's a good question. Minimum of 8 inches. Well, it sounds like he says he's making his dream shop, right?
Yeah. Go big or go home.
No expense spared, it sounds like.
He's already got the SawStop in there. That's a $2,500 piece of equipment right there.
Oh, pluses and minuses with going with the combo machine. Combination machine, you get a jointer, which is as wide as your planer.
Nice.
Which is, you're probably talking 12 inches on up from there.
Most of them
cool.
are 12 inches, yeah.
Then again, let's say you have a 12-inch jointer. It's a 12-inch jointer with fairly short beds compared to even an 8-inch jointer. And I think long beds are pretty important for really getting stock really flat, especially jointing edges nice and flat.
Yes, long beds are good.
And then you have a changeover issue as well, changing over from the jointer to the planer. And
even if it only takes 20, 30 seconds, it still takes 20, 30
every
seconds.
single time. Right. Yeah. And I think more important than that isn't just to change over time, but if you have a setup where your planer is set up to do exactly your final thickness, and then, I got to run another part, you got to break it down for a joiner to flatten it and then dial in that exact thickness again.
I will say this in that regard. I was once, the first video workshop I ever did, we did it in Anatole Birkin's shop. And he had a Hama jointer planer.
Yeah.
And the planer actually had like an odometer on it.
Yes.
I don't think it must have gone in millimeters, and it would spin over. So if you just were like, oh, I'm at 523 millimeters or whatever it was, you could adjust it and then go right back to
You
that.
could zero it out
that's
right to
cool.
that guy and go back, or
Yes.
Okay.
In essence, yes.
And that's like close enough.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be good. Yeah. And but I do think if this guy were if he had a small shop. And,
Yeah, space is the next consideration.
Yeah, he does mention garage, so I'm thinking it might be small.
So if it's a small shop and it's your dream shop, go for a 12-inch joiner planer combo. If you're really money's no object, you could look at something like a Felder or something like that, and the beds may not be so short.
Right.
If it's your dream shop and you have plenty of space, 2 machines, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Do you know any pro shops? I've never taught at a school where they were working on combo machines. If you have the floor space, you've got joiners and planers, usually multiples of everything. So I'm not sure that's the best comparison, but I don't know any pros who are working with combo machines.
Not
haven't
off the top of my head, I don't.
I've never visited anyone who had a
But
a combo.
in Europe, I think it's fairly common.
Yeah.
The one thing that that Kevin is missing is a dust collector too. I think we should mention that. Don't forget the dust collector.
You don't need a dust collector for a planer. What are you talking about? Yeah, he needs really. Probably I would get a Cyclone and set it up centrally, and so you don't have to move it around. If you're going Dream Shop, you might as well go Dream Shop, right?
Yeah, I personally I like the idea of separate machines, especially I think Mike brought up the point about the changeover and the hassle of going back and forth if you need to. I like the idea of going from one machine to the other and not worrying about breaking it down. But
Yeah, or go Lee Nielsen, get a number 7. There's your combo joiner planer right there.
there you go. Nice.
You can do as wide as you want.
Well, there you go, Kevin. Hopefully we gave you some sort of a wishy-washy answer. But
I would say one more thing. I would
yeah,
say,
of course.
even separate machines, 12-inch joiner, 15-inch planer. I don't. The guy says it's his dream shop, so 12-inch joiner, 15-inch planer.
Yep.
Well, we're spending his money wisely.
I have an
Yes.
8-inch joiner that I'd like to upgrade with segmented cutter heads. And I have a 13-inch planer, which is really good planer. And I'm torn between upgrading that with the segmented cutter head, which I think is even more important than the joiner, or going up to a 15-inch, which is it's not the same price, but it's not a whole lot more than me upgrading my planer. So I think you're right. I
Right.
think 15-inch planers is probably a pretty good investment.
Yeah, the nice thing about a 15-inch planer, I have a 13-inch planer, and it's fantastic, but ultimately it's louder than all.
Oh, he's a
Get
little
out.
benchtop guy. with
Yeah, a
the
little benchtop
shirt,
guy.
right.
Yeah, it's like a jet engine, hooked up to a vacuum in your garage.
Yes.
And you can only do like maybe a 1/16 of an inch, or an 1/8 of an inch rather, at the most, and that's
Sure.
on narrow stuff. And so I would really like to get a 15-inch with a segmented cutter head in my shop.
Yeah. Nice and quiet.
It's all about Matt, by the way.
It is. It's all about me.
All right. Well, let's move on to question number 2. This one comes from David Bice. And David says, I'm looking to make one of my first furniture projects a bench to go in front of my fireplace. I don't want my new project to go up in smoke after a spark hits it, and I don't want a finish that would melt away with a warm fire next to it. Any suggestions for an appropriate wood and finish? That's interesting.
Crayon is obviously
That's
out of discussion.
Clearly, it's going to melt.
Well, we debated whether or not to answer this question, and I think we are, because Mike and I have both recently made kindling boxes,
Yes.
which both go near a fireplace
Yeah,
or a wood
mine's
stove.
right next to my wood stove. Gets
So-
warm, but not. I think I just have a coat of shellac on it. If anything, maybe a little wax, and that's
you did
good.
do shellac?
Yeah.
I thought you did the wire
Oh
brush.
no, I just
and-
burnished it. Yeah, right. That was it.
Yeah, I was going to say, why would you even bother putting a finish on it?
I didn't.
From that.
It went rustic. Actually, I did look up finishes, and there are such a thing as like fire-resistant finishes.
It's called asbestos.
No, it's really cool. You put this stuff on, And if it gets too hot, it turns, I think it's just like, it looks like a clear finish, but if it gets too hot, it like foams up
Wow.
into like this protective barrier to keep the wood from burning.
And then you can buff it out afterward, right?
And it will float really well.
So I guess, I guess you could go that way. And if it foams up, you know that it got too hot.
Right.
So
I think the other option, like you did, no finish at all, which I think is fine. I did one coat of Waterlocks on my kindling box, which I recently made, which I think will also be fine. But I do agree, no wax, because wax I think would kind of be a problem.
okay.
Could be.
Don't you think, if it gets...
Yeah, sure. It's candle, right? It's going to burn.
Candle.
Yeah.
It's going to do something.
they make flammable things out of wax and wood too, for that matter.
Right.
So,
And shellac, because I wondered about shellac myself, whether or not it would be a problem next to something that hot. But I would just go with no finish, or
just don't get it that close to.
Yeah,
hot
keep
stuff.
don't
that
put
close.
it in the fire.
Yes.
I mean, the good thing is if he's building a bench, more than likely it's not going to be right next to the pit of flame.
Anyways.
As a kindling box.
You
would
know
be.
what you don't want to do near the fire? I put my feet up near the fire. It's really nice. Sometimes I'm wearing my fuzzy Crocs. Crocs, as it turns out, are very well insulated, so that you put your feet up there and your feet are not getting hot at all.
But they're
the
melting.
bottom of the Crocs start to get a little sticky. Yeah, I start to smell burning rubber. It's
Gives
like,
you
ooh.
good traction, though.
Yeah, so don't wear your Crocs by the fire.
The other finish, I think, which would be fine near the stove, to bring us back, Mike.
Yes.
is milk paint.
Oh, okay,
I think milk paint would be a good finish.
sure.
Yeah, if you want to milk paint it.
You
Yeah.
just do it in black and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, you get charred or not.
All right. We'll move on from, speaking of putting someone near the fire, I'm happy to announce that we finally found our new web producer. Our long search ended in Nashville, Tennessee, where we found Ben Strano. And I have to say, welcome to Connecticut, Ben, or should I say, welcome back. I know you grew up here.
Yep.
So welcome aboard.
Kind of just right down the road.
Awesome. So, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to point out to our listening audience, in particular those who are looking for work, is, when Ben first sent in his resume, it just, kind of stacked up on the rest of the piles. But he followed up with a great email that was really engaging to us, and it
It's very threatening.
well, that too.
It was menacing.
He
Sent your home addresses.
he knew where we lived, but no, it was a really compelling letter, and it's just it goes to show what follow up will do for you, and it got Ben a job. So welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, welcome, Ben.
Good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your background. You've got kind of a music background, some audio engineering kind of stuff, and some web stuff. It's all a big mixed bag.
Yeah, I after high school and college, I moved down to Nashville and started working as a recording engineer. Did that for about 10 years, freelance. And, the music industry just became less fun, started paying a lot less and everything, and started getting into video editing and doing a little bit of web designing, some WordPress, things like that. And a couple of years ago when we had my son, we decided that I'd be the stay-at-home entity, really. And my wife went off to work all the time, and I stayed at home with the kid, and it just didn't really work for us. I was not very fulfilled, unfortunately. I was not a very good stay-at-home dad, so we decided that it was time to make a change, and we were kind of wanting to get close to family again. So we decided that we would move up to Connecticut, and we were thinking in a couple of years. And then this job posting came up, and I emailed it to my wife and said, wow, wouldn't this be perfect? We get right back up to Connecticut, where I'm from. I grew up right in the next town over, and I'd be surrounded and immersed in woodworking, which is my passion right now. It's everything that I think about most of the time, and now all the time.
It sounds really good for like the first year.
It's already started to wear off.
And then,
Here comes Matt to poo on you.
it starts to get a little tiring.
I don't know. Everyone's been here quite a while, though, so it can't be that bad.
We're trapped. No, no, it is it's a wonderful. If you like woodworking, man, this is the spot to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we get, like Matt was talking about, going on the road and visiting people and engaging with all these great authors. It's going to be a great experience for you.
Yeah.
And you've already made it out to the shop, which is a brave thing. It took me at least 6 months before I even set foot in the fine woodworking shop.
Well, it's a lot different now because, well, it used to be we had our offices in the same building as the shop. And this is what it used to be like. If someone went in the shop, within like 10 minutes, 3 or 4 people would be out there watching that person going, you're going to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is that really? And it'd just be the critical eye was always turned. You know, it was like the eye of Sauron.
It's true.
Just like looking for people to go into the shop.
That's funny you mentioned that, because when I first started, I was the copy editor at the magazine. And when I first went out to the shop, it used to frustrate me because I was very intimidated by the people who were surrounding me. And I was just trying to do my little project on my own. I didn't want any help. And as soon as you turn on one of the machines, people just kind of...
dust collector goes on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People come walking out with a cup of coffee like, what are you doing?
Yeah, we're offering suggestions on how you should do things.
Lots of suggestions, yeah.
Yes.
Well, for me, it's been perfect because my wife and son are still back in Nashville for another month or so. So, you know, I've been coming in early, staying late, and then it's like, well, I might as well, it's about 6:30, might as well wander down the shop, and, you know,
Cool.
It's hard to stay away from a 16-inch joiner.
Yeah, when I started, my wife and kids did not come up for 3 months. And so I spent a lot of time in the shop down there. And it was liberating because although where I learned to make furniture, the guy had a 16-inch joiner and all this stuff, it wasn't a shop I could go to whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
You know, and here not only could I go to it whenever I wanted, in some ways I could do whatever I wanted in there, you know, so it was liberating to be able to finally start making whatever I wanted to, you know, it was cool. And there's a 16-inch joiner.
Yes. And a big bandsaw.
And a big 20-inch bandsaw, 18-inch bandsaw.
It's a monster. It's very nice.
I still haven't used the 18-inch bandsaw.
Come on.
Well, the blade's dull, and Matt's hoarding them.
Yes. That's right. I keep the blades hidden.
So one of the things, I mentioned earlier that Fine Woodworking is now on Instagram. That was probably the first day Ben was here. He got us an Instagram account, and I think that first day we jumped over 1,000 followers, right?
No.
A couple
Come on.
days, and that was all thanks to Matt. Really.
Killing my heart.
I gotta give credit where credit's due.
So, the good thing is, it's we're happy to have Ben here, and I'm particularly happy because I don't have to be the web producer anymore. And he's going to be doing some great stuff for us and communicating with all you folks online, and we have some big plans. So it's an exciting time, and we're happy to have him here.
And also for fans of the podcast, which of the people listening, that's like 4. That's
us 4.
That's the 4. Ben, I've heard that Ben has a huge reservoir of sound effects.
Yes.
Awesome.
Not only are there the
really
permanent
do.
classics, but there are some new ones to try out.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to some more questions. This one comes from Josh Harris. And this, I think he kind of takes a poke at you, Matt, here. He says, gentlemen, and then he puts in parentheses, and Matt. So he's implying that you are not a gentleman.
Yeah, well, let's wait till he asks this question.
All right. So he says, I don't ever hear you guys talk about using a sprayer to apply finishes. I understand with Matt's baby furniture that it would be more trouble than it's worth, but for larger projects, it seems like it would be faster. What am I missing? Turbine-style sprayers seem to be the way to go if I were buying one. However, I have a very large air compressor. Is there a reason I should lean toward a turbine-style setup versus a more economical solution of buying a nice air-powered sprayer? We did a review of these turbine sprayers back in 2014 in issue number 242. It was July of 2014. So there's some great options out there.
So a turbine sprayer, what that means is you buy the gun and a little turbine unit, which replaces your air compressor, as a single package. And that's kind of cool. And these are normally HVLP guns, meaning high volume, low pressure. So it delivers the finish at a fairly low pressure so that you're not spraying finish all over the shop and all into the air. It's a more efficient way to deliver the finish. So if you've got a great big compressor, you can get a conversion gun, which is a HVLP gun designed to work with a compressor. And for there, that can work out fine. You've got to figure out a way to get the filter so you can filter your air to remove the water and the oil and all that kind of stuff, so you have really nice, clean, uncontaminated air. And basically, a turbine unit saves you the cost of investing in a really big compressor. So if you don't have one, I think the turbine unit is a good way to go. Mm-hmm. If you've got a great big compressor, then it's sort of up to you if you want to do the retrofit to the compressor to get it to work.
Is it though, with a compressor? Wouldn't it'd be the pressure would be really high? Because can you use a big compressor with the PSI?
Put a regulator on it.
To put a regulator on it.
Yeah, definitely. It's the regulator, and also it's the style of gun that sort of allows it to be used with the compressor. Mm-hmm. I think the bigger question is, for me, is spray finishing. It's a really efficient way to deliver a really good finish, but for me, it's like I don't finish enough to sort of warrant learning the system and investing in that sort of system. Yeah. I think every pro that does a lot of cabinet work, who's really serious about turning out a high volume, is probably spraying.
Sure.
Yeah. But go ahead, Mike.
But you need a dedicated space.
You need a space for it.
A space. Yeah. If it's not dedicated, then you got to set it up and break it down. And,
right.
Yeah. So it's not for like a small shop necessarily, unless you have the ability to, or the desire to break a spray booth down and set it back up.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, these turbine sprays that we reviewed, these all-in-one kits, they used to be pretty expensive, but the current crop, most of them you can buy for, under $1,000. So if you do have the space and the desire to spray, it's a really good, it's now kind of readily available for the home shops. But
yes.
One thing you can do, we did a Q&A about this many years ago. I think it was Jeff Jewett that answered the question. You can spray outside.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So even if you have a small shop, you can set up somewhere. And in that Q&A, he goes through all these criteria, like, you want to do it on an overcast day, in the shade, no wind, and spray, and you want to put something up so you don't get shellac all over your neighbor's brand new Lexus or whatever. But you can do it outside too. You don't, if the weather if it's warm enough.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That gives you like 2 months here.
I've sprayed shellac with a conversion gun, and I went the cheap route, and it worked well. It was just something I was trying to get finish on quickly, mm-hmm. and it worked well. But my main reason for not investing a lot of money into it, into a sprayer, would be I like oil finishes, and I feel like most of the time when you're spraying, you're using shellac or water-based finish, and I don't see many people spraying anything other than lacquer, shellac, mm-hmm. Water-based, and I mean an oil-based lacquers or an oil-based varnish is my preferred method.
Mm-hmm. I don't think you can spray.
No, in many cases, I don't even know, what states, but I know there are many states where you can't spray the.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the industry has gone towards, they call them, water-based lacquers. It's not mm-hmm. quite a lacquer, but it's a water-based finish. And because there's such a big industry demand for high-quality water-based finishes, they've really done a lot of research in progress in developing really, really good water-based lacquers for spraying. I'd stay away from water-based finishes for brushing or that kind of stuff. That would be just terrible, but it is a good option.
It's just disgusting and horrible.
It seems like most of this...
I don't think he said that.
If you respect yourself, you wouldn't do it.
So, but as far as spraying and oil-based finish, dry time, it seems like a lot of spraying is all about speed and efficiency. So you're shooting lacquer or shellac, it dries really quick.
Fast.
Even the water-based stuff, I think it dries pretty quick. So... the oil-based probably, might be counterproductive.
All right. Good answers. Let's move on to question number 4. Stephen Roth has a question about drill bits, and he says, I was hoping you could provide some wisdom concerning the sharpening of drill bits. I'm not talking about augers, Forstners, or brad points. I only want to sharpen that ever-growing cup of dull twist bits on a shelf next to my drill press. As I see it, I have 3 options. 1, buy cheap bits and replace them when needed. 2, buy a drill doctor, which, they cost about $140. And number 3, get the relatively pricey drill sharpening attachment for the Tormek. And Steve says he already owns the Tormek. Any thoughts, fellas? My personal preference is I don't want to sharpen any drill bits. I just want to get new ones.
I get good quality drill bits and then throw them out when they're dull.
I think because I mean, yeah, I have good drill bits too, and they don't. It's not like I use them so much that they're going dull every 2 months.
Right.
You know, it's every couple of years at the most,
Yeah,
at the
you're right.
least. You
Right.
know, so just chuck them and buy new ones.
Yeah, I got the good bits and the beater bits, a set of brad points that I've had forever if I'm drilling through plywood or MDF for jigs and that kind of stuff, and have some really nice brad point bits for going through hardwoods and furniture grade stuff. And I don't replace them all that often, but I certainly don't sharpen them.
Yeah.
We used to have a drill doctor thing back in the shop. Have
did.
you ever tried that? I have no idea how. It
I
was like a
did.
pencil sharpener.
I did
tried it.
try it with some of your bits, Mike.
That's when Mike had to get some new ones.
I did try it once, and I honestly, I did. It's not like I read the directions or anything. I just jammed a bit inside it, and I was like,
Now, that was the pencil sharpener, right?
Now, is that for like twist drill bits?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I used it. I when I was doing Tools Materials, Raleigh Johnson had done the review of that, of one of the drill doctors, and I used it. But I honestly, it seemed like it sharpened it, but I don't know. I just was thinking I don't want to spend that much money to sharpen a drill bit that I can just, buy a new one and be all happy.
That's a lot of money to sharpen drill bits.
Yeah.
And I mean, I find that I use the same four sizes of bits over and over and over.
Yeah.
And most drill bits you can get a 2-pack for $3.99 for, 1/8-inch bits.
those are really cheap bits.
Yeah. You'll be buying new ones in a week.
I'm going to lose them before they go dull anyway.
Yeah,
So.
especially the little baby guys. I lose those all the time.
The only thing that kind of bothers me about it is that, and I know in terms of consumption of raw materials, guys like us, people like us, really are not consuming much, whether it's metal or wood or what have you. It's just an infinitesimal amount of material. But I feel a little guilty just chucking out something like a bit because it's not sharp.
That's why they accumulate next to your drill press.
Well, yes, that's true. I
That's
don't
why
know
I
if
just
I've actually thrown
I
it.
wrap them all up in a bunch of plastic bags and stick a brick in it and just throw it in the river.
Yeah. Actually, we used to have a free table where all sorts of odds and ends would end up on it at
just
the office.
junk.
And we had an old shop manager who couldn't throw anything away, and you put an old drill bit there. He's an ex-machinist. He would just grab those things.
Yeah.
So I felt it was more of a charitable donation at that point than
Yeah.
actually throwing them away. But
That's also why we have a stockpile of dull router bits.
yeah.
What do you mean? That's all we have is dull router bits in the shop. It's true. In our shop, there's some things which, the joiners there kept in good condition, fantastic. Table saw, planers, things like that. But then there's other stuff which is like a hand tool in the shop. I would never use one of the hand tools in our shop. It's like I have all of my own. I maintain them, keep them sharp. Router bits.
Yeah, bring your own router bits. The drill bit selection isn't that bad, but Forstner bits, I think you bring your own.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a good set out there.
It is kind of a strange thing. I mean, we all are fairly proficient at honing a plane iron to be taking thousandths of an inch shavings. But now something like a drill bit, which is probably just as easy, if not easier, to sharpen in order to drill.
One-sided file.
I'm just going to throw it away. I buy sharp plane irons
Yes.
and I throw them away.
Yes, whenever my plane iron gets dull, I just call up Denham Pachowski at Lee Nielsen and say, "Please, could you sharpen one for me and send it down?" It's only $100. It's not a big deal.
Okay, then. Let's move on to one of our favorite segments. This one is our all-time favorite tool of the week.
This week.
Yeah, this week. I keep forgetting that, man.
No,
One of these
it's
days I'll
all-time
get it right.
favorite tool
Of the week.
of the week. This week.
This week.
This week.
All right, I'll have to add that next time.
I think that's what it is.
We'll
That
tweak.
doesn't make
I'll
sense.
tweak the script.
We'll have to
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
That's why I keep
Precise?
eliminating
Of the
it.
week,
This week.
is redundant.
No, it's not.
Just 1 week.
Just 1 week.
Yeah.
Because it could.
All-time favorite tool of the week.
This week. All right, let's just get to it. You want to get us rolling, Matt?
Yeah. And actually, I think I've been doing a lot of dovetails recently. So I think the last time that we did this, I said it was my custom-made Japanese dovetail push chisels that I had made by a blacksmith, made them in Japan. for me to my specifications. So I will not say them this time. This time I will still instead say a number 2 pencil. No, a
Toaster.
A toaster. I have a Japanese push chisel, like a paring chisel, which
Yes.
I use to clean up the pin sockets on the edges of my tailboards. And it's perfect for that. And I love it because it gets super crazy sharp. And just put it right there in the marking gauge lines and just right across, and you get this clean, glass smooth surface.
So the walls of the pins.
No, the shoulder.
The shoulder.
So when I lay out tails,
Yes.
there's a half pin
Yes.
on each pin board.
Oh, yes.
So
Okay.
there's sockets, a half pin socket on the tailboard at either edge.
Oh, those guys, zip
Yeah.
set.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
shoulder there.
Yes.
So I just get my little Japanese push chisel and zip. It's one of I love just sitting in my shop doing that. I love doing
That's
that.
not the same noise you made. So is it a
Yeah.
different technique?
Well, it depends. See, if you're just taking a little bit off, it goes. But if you're taking more off, it goes.
That
Nice.
was the first one.
That was the first one.
So
So I love that chisel.
Nice.
It gets it's crazy sharp because it's 01 tool steel, and it's got a nice it's about 14 inches overall in length, which I found with a really short blade. So if you put my left hand down at the blade, and my right hand is back, I find I get really nice fine control over a short chisel.
And there's no there's no hoop on the end of the handle.
No hoop
'Cause
on
it's
the handle.
Strictly for pairing.
Yeah, because it's strictly for pairing.
That's what I would like, because I have the hoops on the end of my Japanese chisels. I use for pairing as much as chopping, but the hoop end is not really comfortable.
I'll have to give you the name of my man in Japan.
I think I gave you the name of your man in
Oh,
Japan.
yes, you did. Our contact.
we're exchanging names.
Yeah, that guy's awesome.
All right. Well, how about you, Mike? What do you have for this week?
Well, speaking of Denon Polchowski at Lee Nielsen Toolworks, I've been goofing around with for quite a while with the Lee Nielsen honing guide that they came out with.
Mike, let's not say goofing around. You've been
I've been assessing
rigorously
the
testing.
performance and construction of the Lee Nielsen patented honing guide. It looks like the little side clamping guides that you can get for $15 at any catalog that I've been using for years. I like them. They're quick. They're easy. When they start to rust out, you throw them away and buy another one. It's no big deal. So the Lee Nielsen came out. My first thought when Matt gave this to me and asked me to take a look at it was, okay, it looks like the one I already used, but it costs way more. What's the deal? So I've been using it, and it's actually really, really, really nice. And there's a huge difference between that and the ones I've been using, mainly in the way that the blade is supported. The standard side clamping guide, it's got sort of a flat base with two jaws that sort of pinch together between the jaws. And you really got to suck that adjustment screw down really well so the blade doesn't lift up off the bed when you're honing. The Lee Nielsen jig, number one, it's machined really well, but the jaws are dovetailed with the flat portion of the dovetail up. So when you tighten the blade in, it wedges the blade up against the jaw. So there's no way it can lift up anymore. And I find that even just with moderate hand pressure, it just locks the blade in really, really well. You can set your angle just as easily, and just the workmanship of the piece is really nice, and it's rust-free. So chances are it's not going to rust out or wear out. So really, really good jig.
It's all brass and stainless steel, right?
Brass and stainless steel, yes.
What does that thing cost?
$125. And for me personally, I use these just for my plane irons. And it didn't quite handle some of my funky chisels, but I didn't really rely on the side clamping guide for that anyway. So for me, there's lots of different jaws for different angles and stuff, which do work well, but I don't really have a need for those. So I think just the basic guide I really like, and that's definitely going in my toolbox.
Cool. Well, I have a tool that doesn't really fit in my toolbox. It's I bought last year. I bought the Laguna 1412 bandsaw, and I'm really just starting to realize how much I've been missing with this monstrous bandsaw. I had a regular kind of a cast iron 14-inch saw with only like 6-inch of resaw capacity, and bearing guides, and it was it did an okay job, but it didn't have a great fence. I don't have to rig up a fence to do any real good ripping. But this thing is just amazing. And one of the things I just started doing this week was I wanted to try making a Bandsaw Box based on an article by Michael Cullen that appeared recently.
Cool.
And so I grabbed a white birch log from my firewood pile, and it was like 8 or 9 inches in diameter. And I just, started resawing it down. And it's something I couldn't have done on my other saw. And that's just one thing, I've been ripping, resawing with it, has a bigger table. The ceramic guides are just unbelievably easy to adjust and set up. It's just a dream to use. And the dust collection actually works, whereas
Yes.
before, where the port was located on my previous model, it was just useless.
That
It would
little
just fly.
tiny thing, it just kind of
Yes.
flipped down. And
it was a 2-inch, so I wasn't getting anything. But
Right.
this has the 4-inch port. It's just a wonderful machine. It's just like one of those things where I was thinking, man, why did I wait so long to buy a good bandsaw? It's really just eye-opening, and sort of puts my table saw, to the back of my shop, because I can use the bandsaw for so many things aside from joinery. And I even cut tenons on the bandsaw, but I still use my table saw for cross-cutting and things like that.
Cool.
But it's a great tool. How about you, Ben? Do you want to chime in on a tool that I know your shop is kind of
In boxes. Yeah,
What do
well, it is in Connecticut. It's the only thing I did bring up is the contents of my shop. I think if I had to do an all-time favorite tool of the week for this week, I think I would have to go with a good lapping plate for flattening stones. Mike spent some time with me going over a sharpening regimen, and I think the missing piece all these years has been I wasn't using flat stones.
Because you had a set of water stones and you weren't happy
had-
with
kind
them.
of dished.
Yeah, I had the Norton combos 1,000, 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the 8,000 is certainly helping. But having that flat stone makes all the difference in the world, and I was just chasing my tail without it.
Yeah.
And because it always seemed like one of those, $100, $150 to flatten the stones that cost less than the lapping plate just seems silly to me. But without that, you're not really getting anywhere. And I was using sandpaper on a piece of granite, but I think I ran out of 220 sandpaper just because you get the 5 sheets and it just gets so messy when you're trying to flatten it with
Yeah.
the sandpaper.
Yeah.
You can't really reuse them. And so that would be my all-time favorite tool.
Cool.
It's interesting that, I would agree that that's a fantastic thing to have, and I have 2 flattening diamond plates, and I love them. And but it's interesting because we are all here saying how much we like a flat waterstone, how important it is, and I agree it is. But wasn't it Toshio Adate who developed that plate
Yeah,
with
had
a
a-
crown in it
yeah.
so that it would dish his waterstones,
Mm-hmm.
so that when he honed his blades, it would naturally put a camber onto them.
I think he developed that to hone a camber on his power planer blades. No, seriously,
Seriously?
because he used a
Yeah,
power
that's
planer
right.
on his big giant slabs, but he didn't want to leave planer marks. He
Right.
wanted to leave some nice scallops.
Is that what it's explicitly for?
So he actually owns a camber on his power planer blades to
Yes.
get like track-free surfaces. It's like a madman.
That's getting jiggy with it for
Yeah,
sure.
so-
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on. Get back to some questions. Greg Metis has a couple for us. First, he says, "Can you suggest a method for dust collection on a compound sliding miter saw?"
Absolutely. Yes. Broom and dust.
Broom
pan.
and dust. Do it outside. No, there is really, he says he's tried the usual, hooking up the shop vac to the port on the saw and putting up what do you say, a hood in the back. But there's really, there's really no solution to it. It just goes everywhere, no matter what you do.
Well, it's because the blade is exposed when you're
Yeah.
cutting, and
Yeah.
there's just you're just not going to get good suction around that.
There's no place to really do it. We have a rig in our shop that at least it's sort of a box that goes around the saw with a bucket beneath it.
giant box.
Giant plywood
but
refrigerator
it's,
crate.
Yeah, exactly. It's not for everyone. We also have extension wings that go either way, but it's not something that is easily fixed to collect dust.
But I will say, recently I've had some miter saws in for review, and I've been sending them out to our friend Kelly Dutton, who used to work at the magazine. And the most recent one that he did said that it had really good dust collection good dust collection, not just good for a miter saw, but actually good dust collection, especially when hooked up to like a shop vacuum.
Yeah, I have a 12-inch Bosch, not the slider, just a regular chop saw. And for years, I had just that little bag with the little zipper on it, and that didn't work very well.
No, it holds like 0.2 cubic inches of sawdust.
But it packs like hard. It's like anyway. I took that off, and I just hook up my regular shop vac now. Actually does a really good job. I'd say it collects 80-90% of the dust. So, it's not bad. Where I used to have to get out the shop vac and just vacuum off that entire area, every week or so. That's every 6 months I'll vacuum it out. So it's not clean, but definitely just a shop vac on a newer chop saw does a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think anything you can do to help.
How I improved dust collection on my miter saw was I bought a rate alarm saw, which is even worse. So it made the chop saw look really good.
That was a smart move. Greg also has a question about tenons. What do you think of floats for fine-tuning the cheeks of tenon? I know Chris Gochner did an article.
Handwork not too long ago, where Chris showed how to use it. Well, he was using a file, but you could certainly use a float, like how to hold it, where to put pressure, etc., to refine the fit of mortise and tenons and dovetails. And what it breaks down to, what it sort of boils down to, is you use the old pencil lead trick where one side of the joint you're not going to adjust, and the other side you are. So the side that you're not adjusting, you put pencil lead on it, and then you bring the joint together, and the pencil lead marks the high spots of the second part, the mating part. And so you can pull it apart, you see where the pencil lead is, and then you can use your float in this case, or a file, or a rasp would probably be too aggressive, to just hit the high spots. And that's how you bring it all together. And Chris, I was out there last week, and we were doing another handwork together on bridal joinery. And he was, I didn't need to take a picture, and he needed to do some stuff before my next picture. And I look over, and I actually see him. He's got the file out, and he's, just refining that joint till it comes together with no gaps and nice and tight.
Cool. So, was he using just a regular hardware store file, or did he recommended some
in that
files he liked?
He had specific brands, right?
Yeah. Of course, his favorite ones are a box of he found a box of new old stock on eBay.
Oh, okay.
Of like 20 files for $3 or whatever. But but he did recommend some that you can find more easily in that article. I don't remember what they were though.
So a float. It kind of looks like a file, but it looks like it has like really big teeth, but they're continuous all the way across.
That's right.
The blade, and they're actually used for getting really flat surfaces, right? I think Nielsen sells them for making wooden plane bodies.
Well, that's Nielsen.
Goosenecked, right?
Yeah.
Nielsen first started making them because Larry Williams at what was Clark & Williams, now Old Street Tools or Old Street Planes, asked them to make them.
Okay.
And so they started out making just planes for floats for plane making, and they sell them with, so they have different shapes to get into the side of the mortise. And,
right.
But now they do make floats for joinery. So those would be a slightly different shape to them, probably bigger, wider. Yeah, so you can do that, sure.
It's another tool for the arsenal.
Yeah,
that's right.
More tools.
So, all right, let's move on to the final question. This one comes from Carl Stammerjohn. And Carl writes, in Shop Talk Live episode 32, a listener poses a question about skewed planes and skewed planes, in which he states skewing is often recommended when dealing with difficult grain to reduce tear out. I would like to take issue with that belief, or maybe you can correct my thinking. We all agree that a higher cutting angle works best to reduce tear out on difficult grain, but skewing a plane relative to the direction of travel lowers the effective cutting angle. Would it not therefore increase tear out? What say you, Mike?
Well, the best answer
it is proven
I've ever gotten from this is I asked pretty much this exact question to Chris Bexford, who was doing an article on, I think it was like a low angle jack plane and how you can outfit that with various blades at different angles to handle different work. And he talked about using a higher angle in order to tackle trickier grain. And then in watching him use it, he also happened to skew the plane. And I said, Chris, what's the deal? You go higher angle is good, but by skewing it, you're lowering the effective angle. And he just kind of looked at me and said, yeah, but it works better. Yeah. So there you go.
Empirical evidence.
There it is.
So no,
Believe it or not.
I think you definitely get an added benefit from skewing the plane. It's more of a slicing motion, which helps. And then the higher angle also helps. And even though you're lowering slightly the effective cutting angle by skewing it, you get the benefit of the slicing cut. So, all things being equal, it works better. So,
yeah, woodworking is one of those things where practice trumps theory every time.
I think
It's
so.
true.
So yeah, so when you say you disagree with the belief, well, it's like, well, it kind of works for you or it doesn't work for you. Give it a try. And whatever works best for you works best because it works best for you, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, forget about the math and the science. It
Yeah.
just works.
Yes.
Sort of like a plane iron, people have said, well, because of the blade is taking thickness, shouldn't the two beds be offset so that the rear of the plane is even with the bottom of the blade? How can a hand plane work if a blade sticks out the bottom? That doesn't make sense.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And it's like, yeah, but it just kind of does.
But it does.
Yeah.
So,
Genius at work. Yeah.
Yeah. Put that in your hat. And
Yeah, it's
Riding the town
Yeah, I mean,
Yankee.
being thoughtful, I think is very important to woodworking. But I think sort of thinking beyond a certain point, you might be working against yourself.
Yeah.
in other words, don't think too much.
Don't lose sleep over it. It works. So,
Mike is saying you're really not that smart, so stop thinking.
I don't think Mike said that. I think Matt said that. All right.
I didn't say that.
Let's get to some audience feedback. Here's some feedback that listeners sent in over the wire. This is a strange name. Bra Remover writes, I love the podcast. Even though you guys are not comedians and therefore legally not allowed to tell jokes, you still get me to laugh at least once per episode. Thank you, Matt. Ed Pernick, the blast from the past, writes, thanks for having me on, guys. It was good to be in the hot seat again, in his khakis. And then here's a little, we got an email from John Miller who writes, you laughed at the notion of putting end grain through the planer. Sorry, guys, but that is a tried and true method for doing end grain cutting boards and butcher blocks. You have to take very light cuts, basically the machine's minimum cut, but it is far faster and easier than using a low-angle plane by hand. I spent about 10 minutes per board with the random orbit sander after planing. It works great and it's very safe. Just glue on sacrificial strips at the leading and trailing edges and go to town. I don't know if we have a rebuttal for that, but apparently he thinks it works. And hey, if it works for him, have at it, right?
Mike just said if it works for you, it works.
Yeah, there it is.
What
So-
is this? This might be something we have to test out in the Fine Woodworking Shop.
Yes.
That we'll put brand new blades in our planer, and we will sharpen a low angle jack plane and have it be truly sharp, and we'll test it out.
Yes.
And we'll have to find the blades that, the sharp blades that Matt is hiding in his office for the planer.
Now, did you edit this down? Was this the same response that said that they did experience some chip out on the trailing edge?
He had made one.
So let's full disclosure.
Full
here.
disclosure. No, he was.
And he had to put plywood over the window that was directly behind the planer.
And ballistic glass.
Well, he said he did okay he was using oak for the cutting board, and he said he had pretty good results. So, I don't have any reason to think that he's lying, but I think maybe Matt's right. Maybe we should go and give it a whirl because.
Yes, no, I absolutely take this at face value. If it works, that's awesome, and there's some empirical evidence for you. And I also have to remember a story of someone trying this and destroying a set of planer knives. So take that with a grain of salt as well.
Bring your own planer knives, Matt.
And so I would say if you're going to try this yourself, maybe hold both expectations in your mind as you feed this stock through, and you may be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Or you may be in the emergency room.
Or you may be. So, I don't know.
I feel like for every time that I've heard this going well, I've heard 2 or 3 stories of it going poorly.
Okay.
So
Maybe everyone listening should try it.
What if you
and we could sort of collect the data, and we'll at least sort of give you an over/under
We'll
if you
get
want to
the
try it
you-
yourself.
it'll be
We are not buying anybody planer blades.
It'll be a great collection of
Whose email
YouTube
address are we
videos.
giving them for results?
Do you think it'll help if you skew the board?
Yeah.
I don't know. All right.
Send your results to achristiana@taunton.com.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Tune in again in 2 weeks on January 29th, 2016 for our next episode. Meanwhile, if you have any woodworking questions, send them as well as your comments to shoptalk@taunton.com. Spread the word about Shop Talk Live. Hook us up with your woodworking friends by any means necessary, including Twitter and Facebook. And you can catch the podcast via iTunes. And while you're there, please give us the all-powerful 5-star rating. You can also stream the podcast on the web at www.shoptalklive.com or catch us on iHeartRadio. Thanks for listening and have fun in the shop. See you next week, guys.
A guy named Alan was there, and Blake, and TJ, and Preston, and Preston's wife was there, and also John.